In last week's video, I painted this kind of surreal cattle painting with a watercolor background, and something weird and wonderful happened completely by accident. While painting the background with watercolor, I accidentally created the illusion of three-dimensional blocks. So in this video, I thought I'd try to recreate that effect and see if I can do an even better job, but do it deliberately this time. Okay, well, I'm going to try and replicate that same effect. So I've got my big synthetic mop brush. I've got some quinacridone green here and then quinacridone orange. So I'm loading up my brush with water and I'm going to start with the green. And I want a very watery wash. And my plan is to load the brush with as much water as possible, because I think I've discovered or I think I've worked out, this is the first time I'm trying it since the last video, but I think I've worked out the trick to getting this effect. We'll see if I'm correct. So I'm going to give myself a little vanishing point up there and come in here, and then on top of that keep going again and again. Now what the reason I'm doing multiple brush strokes is I want to build up a bead of watercolor at the bottom of the brush strokes. Now we'll do the same coming down at an angle. So repeated application of the paint so that I get a nice strong bead of watercolor. Okay, and it takes a little while for the bead to run down, but that's getting there. Right, I'm dunking the brush in the water, and before that dries, just mopping up most of that wash on the palette. I'm now going to switch to a slightly smaller synthetic round, and I'm going to pick up some of the orange, and I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to cut through from top left to bottom right, and then my hope is that when I cut through the beaded brush stroke, I get the same effect that we saw before, but that does not seem to be the case. So why is that? Get a bit more water on there. So I'm thinking the mistake I may have made is to use the smaller brush. Don't have enough water on the go. Why is that not running? Maybe it's the time I took to swap colors from one to the other. Yeah, I think that's it. Okay, right, let's try again. So, you may feel, flipping heck, Mike, that's a bit of a waste of watercolor paper, but I would counter that query by saying, one, I can always paint over this and or use use the brush strokes I've created already as the starting point for something else, and two, even if that's not the case, I'm willing to sacrifice let's get that one broken. Willing to sacrifice one sheet of paper if I learn a cool technique. So one of the things I learned over the years from doing research physics and engineering R&D is that if you do get something working, don't change anything. So I kind of broke the golden rule there without realizing it, in that I think I used the same color, just one color, with the same big brush when I did it previously, and then of course I changed something by switching color and brush. So okay, let's have another go. Let's see if we can, let's go back to the green, and if it mixes in with this bit of orange I've got, I don't mind too much. Right, so I've got plenty of water on the, I don't know how well you can see, but it's kind of pooling up there. It's quite a deep puddle. So I'm going to soak my brush in that puddle, and we'll go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. A bit more water, and then we'll try again. So we go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and that's still not working. It's not doing its thing. Maybe have I not added enough water? Ah, that's starting to do it, isn't it? A little bit. Well, I've added a lot of water there to various places, and I don't seem to be getting the same technique the same effect that I got before. So I'm going to go back and review the video and see what I'm missing. Okay, I think I've worked it out. We'll see if I'm right. So I'm going to go again with the green. I'm going to put a bit of the orange in there because I don't really care too much about the color. So a lot of water. And this, I think, is going to be the key. So the brush strokes I put down here have to be horizontal. Last time I had 2 sets of diagonal brush strokes, but do you see how much thicker that bead of watercolor is at the bottom of that brush stroke? So I'm going to put another one down there. So sorry, it's a much thicker bead than I had before for the diagonal, because with the diagonal brush stroke, the bead of watercolor runs down towards the bottom, and then it can escape, from the bottom of the diagonal brush stroke. So now I'm going to do the same thing. So I've got 3 heavily beaded. Let's make sure they really are up at bead capacity. And let's see what happens. So I'm going to just picking up a different green than I happen to have on my palette. So I'm now going to sweep diagonally through the heaviest parts of these beads, and we'll see what goes on, what happens. Okay, here we go. 1. That's starting to do it a little bit, but it's still not behaving in the way I thought it was going to. I don't know. I don't quite understand the mystery of the block solution. Well, this bit here has kind of worked, and that bit's starting to do it. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? Okay, let's have another look at that video. Okay, so I think I'm doubting myself now, but I think I've worked it out. I think because I laid down a wash up just above where I was putting down the brush strokes before the paper was already wet. So as you can see, it's a little bit green because I've got a bit of paint left on the brush, but I'm wetting the paper. So now going back in with freshly loaded quinacridone green, I'm going to do now that's running too much. Maybe I have to put it here so that it beads at the edge of that wet patch. Let's see what happens. Let's put one up here as well, just to see. So that bottom patch I think is looking the most promising. So here we go, we'll try again. Ah, there we go, that's starting to do it, isn't it? A little bit. Let's see what happens if we go up a bit higher. Really try and get as heavy a bead as I can. Look at that beauty. Right, surely this is going to work. We'll see what happens. That started to do it. Well, while I'm, tormenting this piece of paper, I may as well just continue to have some fun. And I do like the sort of fractal patterns that are being created here. It's not quite the effect I was expecting again, but I guess that's in a sense the nature of watercolor. So let's try again. Try and do another one here. No, so it doesn't work so well wet in wet. So I think you have to have. I think you've got to have a wet patch of paper and then a dry patch, and then you apply the horizontal brush stroke at the bottom of that wet patch. So you get a massive bead and then sweep through, and then it runs down into the dry. I think that's the trick, but it's a pretty temperamental balancing act in terms of the amount of fluid and the amount of water and the amount of paint you've got. So while I'm here, in the interests of creating something surreal, I've got a bit of a band of a lighter colour there, so let's see if we can do a wet in wet beltie with what paint I've got. So obviously that's a rather messy looking thing we've got there at the moment, but I might be able to make something of that in a bit. We'll see. Okay, so I'm going to put that down flat to let it dry. Here's the other one from earlier. let's go on the back of this paper. It's not ideal painting on the back, but who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? It might actually work better. Okay, so I'm going to put a wet layer down there, and then wet layer down there. And I'm going to keep adding to that to get as thick a bead as I can. Okay, and then we'll see what happens. So this looks like it's about to burst here, so we'll go through. No, oh, there we go. That's sort of it. Okay, so we'll go thicker, thicker with the water, and we'll go through this one. Ah, it drips off the end of the brush stroke. That's what I've been doing wrong. Okay, I'm finally working it out, I think. All right, here we go. Here's another one. Boom. It's going to drip down there. There we go. And again. Boom. Oh, that one didn't work very well. This is one of those things when you want a bead of watercolor to run, it won't. So let's see if I can. It's probably going to go in a moment. This one looks about ready to burst. Let's put a bit more water. There we go. A bit more water there. Come on. There we go, it's about to go. Just jiggle the paper. Come on, there we go. Right. So I've got some kind of weird blocks going on there. Can I get something similar for this other patch? Actually, I want a bigger gap between the blocks. That's what I was actually after. See if I can. I want a bead just there. There we go. Let's get that. Come on, come on, come on, come It's remarkable how resistant to vibration some of these are, and I don't want to sort of burst the bubble. Literally, because I want it to be like a natural break. I don't want my brush to influence the run directly. Let's try it with the brush handle, see if I just pop it there. Does that make it go? Come on. There we go. All right, so I think there's definitely potential here, but I haven't quite worked out what to do just yet. I've just discovered another mistake, which could be the key to getting this technique to work more consistently. So I thought I was using watercolor paper in last week's video, but in fact I wasn't. I was using mixed media paper. So that's what I've got lined up here now. And I think already it's starting to look more promising because those beads are breaking far more quickly. Oh, famous last words. We'll see what happens. Yeah, this is looking more like the effect I got before. So adding a lot of water definitely seems to be the key as well. And oh wow, that's working really well, isn't it? Cool. Okay, good. Okay, got there in the end. Right, I'm going to let that do its own thing and dry now. Now, once in a while, my wife and I go down to the quay at Exeter. You can see there's a few failed or half-finished boats there. And it's kind of a cool place to sketch because there are interesting buildings. This is from outside a cafe, so you've got a cool double-globed lamppost there, and then buildings with lots of interesting shaped windows because some of the buildings are quite old down at the quay and they've been repurposed. Another view of the same lamppost and some of the multitude of different shaped windows. You know, sometimes I sketch people in the cafe who are off at a distance, and then the other day we popped down there in the evening. That's a rather poor version of my wife eating some chips. We were actually sat on the edge of the canal basin here, and again, interesting buildings in the background, and across the water was a little boat, little yacht. Didn't quite get that one right, but then with this one, this is kind of like a gangway coming down to the water. This is a floating platform, and there was a guy sat there that I've sketched with a bit of the same yacht off in the background. And I thought, well, that angle there is really quite similar to this angle here. So I've got my 0.2mm unipin marker, and I'm going to try and replicate this figure. So we'll on this platform, I'm going to put a belted galloway. And because this is off in the distance in this weird landscape, or a little more off in the distance, we're not going to be looking down on the galloway in the same way that we are the guy. There's some more people that I sketched at the cafe. That's a possibility. I quite like the idea of having somebody peeking up from one of the gaps in between the blocks. There's another boat. So what else have we got in here? A completely random interjection, but here's a little cartoon I'm in the middle of doing. Belted galloways on dartboard, but with a unicorn in the middle of the field. I need to colour that in. But so my original plan, actually, what I was looking for in my sketchbook was a sketch of somebody strolling along the road. I was maybe going to put a man in a suit, as I have done in some of my previous surreal work. But now that I've come across this chap here, I like the idea of him. See, he's just got his arm resting on the table there, but I kind of like the idea of him just peeking out from behind this block with his arm resting on that there. So I'm going to give that a go. So we've got his hand there. Heel of his hand, forearm. He's either got a t-shirt on or sleeves rolled up. I don't remember which, and my drawing doesn't make it completely clear, but that's okay. Collar, collar. And then part of me wants to put a kind of larger belted galloway sticking its head in from the side of the page here. But I'm not quite sure. I think for the moment I might just leave it with those three and add some colour to those, and we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the beltie, and I've just got a mix of cerulean blue and some of the quinacridone green that was left on the palette on my brush. And I quite like the light green on the top of the stripe there. So I'm actually going to go in, sort of keeping things, obviously this is a completely made up world, but we can still be fairly coherent in terms of the colours we use throughout that world. So coming in with the quinacridone green for a shadow colour on this belting, and that's going on. That's spreading a little further than I intended, but that's all right. We'll keep it going through the rest of the animal. And if the blue doesn't show, that's okay. And then just going to add a little more water and rub my brush off of the there we go. And that's added a bit of shadow there, and I'll come back in with perhaps a bit of white acrylic in a bit and add some highlights where I feel needed. Now I've got quite a bead of colour there, and as has been the theme throughout this video, we've been trying to get those beads of colour to run, but I don't particularly want them to, especially not from the middle there, not for this particular section. So just going to use my paper towel to grab up most of that pigment. And then the question is, do we include a cast shadow? And I think I want to. And that's probably enough. I've just trickled that shadow over the edge, in inverted commas, of the block that he or she is sat on. Oh, it's a he, isn't it, the one I've drawn? Right, let's go on to this gentleman. So again, we'll try and keep things fairly in keeping, within reason. So more of the quinacridone green. So I'll give him a dark green shirt. and then get a little touch of yellow ochre. So a little touch of yellow ochre. And then my thought at the moment is, it's off camera at the moment, but if you remember, I've got that guy popping up from what appear to be the channels between these blocks. And I also might have a couple of belties, you know, popping up down in the foreground. I think that's probably what I am going to do. But nevertheless, you know, this is a made-up world, so I kind of like the idea of having this guy still having his feet in the water. So just mixed in a bit of the green with the yellow ochre. That's not quite the effect I wanted there, so I'm just going to lift off most of that, I think. I think I'll come back in with my pen and just put some ripples there later. I think it should be okay then. So the next question is, oh, I missed out a bit of, just realised I missed out a bit of exposed skin on his neck. So yeah, that's okay. I think a little pop of red, just not too much, but or perhaps orange. For the shorts might complement the then for now, I think I'm going to keep his hair white. And again, just going to look at my come back in with the quinacridone green. Just put a little bit of a cast shadow there, and then run that down there as well, so that it's kind of curving over the edge of the block. Not having much luck, I don't quite know what I'm doing wrong, but that's perhaps a bit better. I think that shadow is a bit dark, I think that's the problem. So let's lift out a little bit of that, get a bit of paper towel. I think I prefer that for now, so that's good. And then